What Once Was Mine, Chapter 33, Rapunzel. By the time Rapunzel woke the next morning, the hearth was already swept and a fresh fire warmed an ancient fry pan filled with bubbly golden treats. The good wife was pouring a bowl of cream. Flynn was setting the table. Rapunzel sat herself down, guilty about having slept through it all. She had no idea what hour it was when she finally collapsed, but made a mental promise to do all the cleanup. Gina brought over the pancakes, plopping one expertly, if ungracefully, onto each plate. "Funny, I didn't really see you as the master of the feminine arts," Flynn said. The next pancake landed on top of his head. He pretended not to care, ripping off pieces and eating them as if it were the most normal thing in the world, but stopped short of putting butter on it, too. "Say, Princess," he began casually. "When Gina and I were hunting yesterday, we found this super pretty waterfall, perfect for a picnic. Rapunzel here has had a long day of studying ahead of her, for which she needs total concentration," the good wife interrupted. Rapunzel would have pouted, but she already had her own plans for the day, and plans for Flynn. But not of her midnight thoughts were about magic. "I would love a picnic, but maybe tomorrow. Now that we're figuring out my hair, I think we also need to figure out what's going on with all these people randomly looking for me. As you said, I can't stay here forever. So, why don't you and Gina go find one of those men and bring him back here for questioning?" "Listen, she's already sounding like a leader, a future queen," the old woman said happily, elbowing Gina in the side. "It isn't randomly," Flynn pointed out. "You just left your tower for the first time in 19 years, and now people are looking for you. Coincidence? I think not." He smugly sipped his goat milk and tried not to make a face when the liquid hit his tongue. "I'm in," Gina said with a shrug. "This will take an expertly cunning plan," Flynn said thoughtfully, stroking his chin. "Wait, I know. We have Gina here, dress up as Rapunzel." "Never going to happen," Gina said immediately. "Come on, it's just for a few hours. You'll be the bait." "Nope. But you have a slender waist. Maybe with the corset in your dreams." "Oh, believe me, my dreams have nothing to do with you in a corset. My nightmares, on the other hand." "There's a reason I never wanted more than one kid," the good wife muttered. Dodger let out an angry bleat from the window. "Human kid," she added apologetically. "Great. You guys finish? I'll clean up," Rapunzel said. She began stacking the dirty dishes into piles and combining the remaining bowls of uneaten food. As she brought them over to the scrying bowl/washing basin, Flynn got up, with a quick look around to see if the mother and daughter noticed, and took her aside. Hey, Rapunzel? These are for you." She was more intrigued by the tone of his voice than what he held in his hand. The flirty, constantly joking writer had a catch in his throat that was almost a stammer. But he held his nice, too, though a bouquet of flowers. But not some quickly picked nosegay from a careless child. Even Rapunzel, with her limited experience, could see that. They had been arranged with care and chosen for their colors, and the whole thing was tied up with a plaited grass. When had he picked them? She did cringe a little at the giant pink mallow that was in the centerpiece. It could only have come from the good wife's garden. And good though she might have been, so many fairy tales begin poorly when someone plucked something illegally from a witch's garden. "The lanterns would have been tonight," he said as he smelled and picked off the blossoms. "I'm really sorry. That was the only thing you wanted for so many years, and we missed it." Rapunzel was startled. She had actually forgotten about the floating lights since her adventure with the circle of stones and everything else. And it sounded like he actually cared. Not just about the crown, about her missing out. Flynn opened his mouth as if he was going to say something else. His eyes caught in hers. Then he grinned and tried to look charming. "Not bad, right? I always thought of the whole adventurer thing. It didn't work out. I'd become a florist." But Rapunzel wasn't sure what she wanted to say. Something like, "Bring back that Flynn from a moment ago. The nice, nervous one. The one who picked me flowers." "Don't you like them?" He waggled his eyebrows at her. She would not be drawn into his dissembling. She would not let him off the hook. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him on the cheek. "Thank you. That really means a lot to me." When she turned away to do the dishes, she saw that his face was flushed. Your task is twofold, the good wife told her after the others had left. She had sat Rapunzel at her workbench, in a nook which didn't seem to be there before. You must, of course, document your powers every day. See how they change throughout the lunar month. But more important, you must figure out how to bring them forth reliably. You will not always have the advantage of an ancient moon shrine or the primal rage of a babe. It wasn't an advantage, Rapunzel said immediately. It was murder. Nonsense, the old woman's blueberry eyes blazed like a lightning storm in a lavender gray sky. You were a baby. It wasn't your fault. You could no more control yourself than you could control crying and breathing and wetting yourself. If you had been raised normally, you would have seen other babies in your life. Oh, the tantrums that had the best of them throw. So angry they forget to breathe. Why, if any baby had powerful magic, even the sweetest-tempered child, anyone would be dead for a day's ride in any direction, and all the world's seas turned into milk. Begin your 19th year by forgiving yourself, Rapunzel. It's a far better gift than floating lanterns. Rapunzel was speechless. As the old woman's words sank in, a sharp pain clove in front of her forehead. She felt everything at once. Sadness for the dead nurse she didn't even know. Despair for the parents she thought she killed. Longing for the living parents she hadn't. Regret for 19 years of confinement for a crime that wasn't really her fault. Anger, because Gothel had never said anything like this. You were a baby. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. The good wife reached out and squeezed Rapunzel's hand, seeing the pain in her face. Rapunzel sucked in the tears she thought was going to start, and gave a deep, shuddering sigh. Thank you, she murmured. I don't know if I can forgive myself immediately, just like that. But just knowing that I can, that I should, that's a start. Well and honestly said. Now set it aside for later musing. You have work to do. Sit here and focus on the moon. Anything that has to do with the moon. A poem, a song, something that feels right. You'll know. Rapunzel tried. She really did. It was bright morning out, and the moon was probably up. But even knowing that, she, like anyone else, still thought of the moon in association with the night. She couldn't fix it in her mind when it was sunny. She sang every moon song she could think of, every nursery rhyme. Hey diddle diddle, and the man on the moon came down too soon, and boys and girls come out to play, slash the moon doth shine as bright as day. Nothing. She could get the hair to glue, a little, by recapturing the feeling of the circle, sort of like she could fix death on the birds Gothel brought by refeeling what she had each time she performed that terrible rite. But she couldn't summon the fullness of power that had transformed Pascal. The good wife came in to check on her once in a while, to bring her mugs of tea or broth, or little packets of dried herbs, crystals, stones, and even bones associated with the moon. She taught Rapunzel the few celestial incantations she knew, hoping one would work. Nothing did. Rapunzel decorated and redecorated her chart, filling with the margins with guesses. Waxing gibbous moon. Teleportation? Third waning crescent. Making things smell different? At lunchtime, Gina's mother, sensing Rapunzel's exhaustion and incipient despair, took her on a little tour of the goat farm and showed off her neatly laid-out patch of garden, which, besides flowers and vegetables, had several carefully plotted rotting logs, with mushrooms sprouting enthusiastically in suspiciously neat rows. I wish Gina had taken an interest in the magical arts the way you have, the old woman said with a sigh. Goddess knows I tried. Potions that changed color, making small things explode, all the sorts of things that children love. Thought I would have a daughter and an apprentice. Ah, well, that shows me, doesn't it? Imposing my will on another living thing and making assumptions about how things worked, just like a new parent. My Gina taught me some good lessons about life and expectations. But, so, was Gina always interested in becoming an adventurer? In leaving the tower, seeing the world? Ever since she was little, the old woman said fondly. She was always taking my best knives and running outside to practice fighting. So physical. climbing trees, slaying imaginary villains, and then as soon as she was old enough, rampaging through the woods looking for people to practice on or join up with. And you didn't stop her? Rapunzel asked, as innocently as possible. It didn't come out the way at all. The good wife laughed. Stop Gina? Have you met my daughter? And besides, why would I want to? It's the only thing she has truly ever wanted to do or be. I'm her mother, not her guard dog. My work is to see that she is adequately prepared for whatever she wants to do in life, that she can feed herself, catch a tear in her clothes, find the right leaf for stomach cramps, and teach her that no matter what happens, I will always love her. Go out for adventure, come home for love. That's what I say. They began to head back to the cottage. The old woman didn't have the cane, but moved perfectly well on her own bare feet. Rapunzel followed thoughtfully. Princess, adventurer, enchantress, mother? She had never even thought about the word as it applied to herself, separate from Mother Gothel. That was also a thing she could be. Back inside, the workbench mocked her with its witchy paraphernalia and magical bric-a-brac. Rapunzel gritted her teeth and refused to notice how the sunny day was passing, and here she was yet again inside, doing strange little projects, like back in her tower. She tried to surprise her powers into working. She even pretended to get up to do something else, then whipped back around and shouted, "Moon!" Nothing. She sighed and blissfully began to poke at the little things on the table, arranging and rearranging them into aesthetically pleasing combinations. Finally, somewhat satisfied, she admired the shape she had made without really thinking, a crescent of crystals and moss. She could paint that, she thought, make a nice little still life. Rapunzel blinked. Of course. She had been so oblivious. She took out a charcoal stick and began to sketch on the workbench itself. Of course, the moon wouldn't come out to her in songs or poems or crystals or whatever. She felt the most centered, the most tranquil when she was painting or drawing. Lost in her own world or a new one she imagined. She shouldn't have made a chart. She should have drawn a circle, with the moons going from waxing to waning all the way around. She hummed to herself a little, the way she always did when she painted. Her hair began to glow. A little shading here, a few light strokes in the middle of the full moon for the face that Rapunzel saw there, circles and shadows and cross-hatching. She worked extra hard on the profile of the fatter waxing crescent, where the moon would be now. She knew what it looked like as she felt her hand shape it. Her power surged. Her hair began to sparkle. She looked around frantically for something to release her magic on. The first thing she saw was her tea, so she grabbed the red clay cup and wrapped the end of a braid around it. Just like with Pascal, sparks sprayed off of her hair and over the object. When they faded, they revealed a heavy, crude clay cup. Rapunzel started to slump in disappointment, and then noticed something. Where the hair had touched and the sides, the cup was now shiny black, like onyx or obsidian. "Good wife!" she cried excitedly. "Gina's mom! Come look!" The old lady came pitter-pattering up as fast as she could. "Oh, you did it!" But rather than admiring the mug overmuch, she leaned over to peer at the illustrated moons now covering her workbench. "A mandala," she said. "Very clever, Rapunzel. I never would have thought of it myself. I know some folks who use them. Not so much here, but in other lands. They are built and destroyed in each session. Or is this a focus object for you? Something to gaze at and strengthen your intentions?" "I don't know," Rapunzel admitted. She looked at the black smudges on the cup. "But it looks like I'm only halfway there. I need something else. Something more." As she pondered her more what, she looked around the cottage, hoping for an answer. Her eyes lit up when she saw several crude wooden trays, on which were piles of colored powders. "Hey, can I use those?" "Oh, my dyes, of course," the good wife said in surprise. "I hardly ever use them myself, except to remind myself on which potion is which, or sometimes for the goat's wool. Please help yourself." Without wasting a second, Rapunzel what she did best. She grabbed her supplies and began painting.